Do you know that is the number one thing when I ask people, why do you stand up when the plane like just comes to a stop? And the number one answer is because I'm tired of sitting and my back hurts. My fucking back hurts too. And I just remain seated until it's my turn. So I guess I just don't buy that. It's just, there's so many, just the world revolves around.
No.
The Hollow Bunny.
This is a disagreement because I think the guy charging from 15, row 15 up to 8, that is 10 degrees of bullshit. That is a completely different conversation. I make a charitable assumption about people usually. And so that brings us
the best.
That brings us right into our convo about kind of bringing up some of the nuggets, some things to chew on for the listeners of the Hollow Bunny podcast. Some people want to chew on things. Some people want to be filled. Some people want to marinate. You know, there's all kinds of stuff. And you and I recently went to a business forum where we got to listen to some of the world's greatest speakers. And one of them said, let's make a charitable assumption. So I don't know.
He did.
And I really tried to take that and make it actionable.
Oh, I really do. I am not the negative Nelly that I appear to be right now, because I really do look for the best intentions of people. I try to offer people grace, but I travel weekly, maybe, weekly every other week. And this is the thing that seems to be occurring all the time. It's hard to give everyone grace, and they're not standing up because they're in pain. They're standing up because they're just selfish and they want to grab their bag and they want to put their butt in everyone's face. So
I don't know.
That's my experience.
Maybe you
I don't know. I'm going to start wearing my t-shirt.
Wait. I think a couple things here. Number one, I think you need to give the gift of Kristen and put your ass in somebody else's face. Why are you holding out?
Yeah, I may take a page out of your book and just stand up and be the one that commands the space. Take it first, basically.
Take it first.
But then I'm becoming who I'm trying to not be.
No, come on. But then I have this charitable thing. I'm like, would you like me to get your bag, sir? Ma'am, would you like me? Your bag is over it. You want some help? I just stand there and I'm hospitable and just claim my space. But my ass is freely.
I do love it when people do that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh gosh, that brings me to another thing. So do you ever I have found in my travels, my observations, and then we'll absolutely start talking about our business forum that we attended. And so I have noticed that there are some lovely humans that travel. So let's look for the silver lining here, bring out the good. And I do love it when people are standing up and they say, can I get anyone's bag? But I've noticed that they do target is a strong word, but they ask individuals who are maybe in their golden years. No, in their golden years, perhaps.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And do you know that as of late, and I don't know if maybe I've just aged since turning 50, but do you know that, I've always found that lovely. I was like, oh, look at that. They're helping the elder of us in the generation. And suddenly the last 3 flights I've been on, men are like, can I get your bag for you? And I'm all, no, I CrossFit. I can get my own bag. And I know it isn't the best intentions, but
thank you.
Oh my gosh. I know, but you know that's the reason that I started going back to strength training, is because if the day that I cannot haul my bag, my carry-on above my head in the airline is the day that I'm going to have to start checking a bag. So I never want to be that person. So, but it's so kind. It's very kind.
It's super sweet. They're being charitable. They're being gentlemanly. I mean, Ted's now in the South. I mean, that's a thing. I think it's kind, right? And it's not saying you look frail. It's kind. I think it's so that they can pull your bag off of out of the overhead bin and maybe get a glimpse of your bag tag that has your digits on it.
Oh, perhaps. Speaking of bags, and then I promise we'll talk about business. But when Sil and I, we were in New York together ever so briefly, and we attended this very business event, and we found ourselves. I don't know, in New York City in the Coach store, because Sylvia, you dragged me into that store, didn't you?
I have a bag.
Didn't you? You dragged me into that store.
I did. Is that what you told your spouse? Yeah, it's true. I dragged you in.
Absolutely. Well, because you showed me your showed me your backpack, and
Mhm.
what's the brand of that backpack? It's a
Tumi? It's a
beautiful. We don't
beauty.
get we don't have sponsors, but Tumi, if you
Oh, yeah,
are
we do.
listening and
Yeah, we
you
do.
would like us to, we don't have enough listeners to have sponsors yet, so we're
Yeah, we do.
but we're working on it. But Tumi and Coach, if you are listening, it started with Sylvia's backpack, and she showed it to me, and I'm not a person that envies. I'm not the compare and despair. And God, I wanted that backpack. I wanted to rip it from your body and take it as my own. I wanted to take your little monogram right off of there, and I wanted to make that Tumi bag my own. And that's really what started it. And then we ended up in the Coach store, and guess who wasn't going to buy a bag? This guy.
You.
But what happened, Sil? What happened? What did you do to me? What did you and the lovely lady in grad school who works at Coach do to me? What was her name? Nancy? Her name was Nancy from Coach. What's up, Nancy, in the Coach store in New York City?
New
Who
York
made
City,
me
but
buy
she's
a
from
bag, both of you?
California. She's from Southern California.
Yeah.
Okay, we didn't make you. I said, Kristen, will you come on? What's the worst thing that could happen? You love it. You instantly felt it. You felt a connection with that bag. She's a beauty on you. That little cross. I encourage you
Yeah,
to
she's a
lean
beauty.
in and give
Yeah.
yourself a little bit of love. That's what
And
friends
here's
are
what
for.
happened. So
Okay, so
we literally bought the same bag, and here's why. Because I spotted this bag and I loved it, but then I was like, no, because I just bought a new house. So I'm trying to, tighten up the bag straps, if you will. And so I said, no, ma'am. Kristen Zeman is going to show some restraint here and not buy a Coach bag. And then
I say, bitch, please.
Sil saw the bag that I was looking at. She was like, oh, that is hot. But starts to like gravitate towards another color, but comes back to the blue color.
Wait.
And it looked so good on you. And I encouraged you to get
I
it.
initially
Yes.
walked
Do you
up
have a
that
different
stairwell. I do have a different version.
Mm-hmm.
We walked up the
Okay,
stairwell.
go.
I saw the one that was kind of like a camo. I thought, that is a Coach camo.
Yeah.
I feel kind of sporty
Yeah.
spice, but it's still girly. But I could do this. I tried it on. I was like, not really. And then you put the blue one on, and it was pow. The room
It
got
popped.
dark. There was
It
a
popped.
spotlight on you. It popped. I said, oh my gosh. You said, I'm not buying it. I said,
A disco ball.
This is fabulous on me. I'm going to rock this. Put it on, said, I want it. And I looked you in the eyes, and you weakened.
I know. And I'm going to tell you, can I tell you though? Remember? Do you remember? I was relieved because remember, we have no listeners and no sponsors. Do you remember that I was, she said she only had one of those in the back. So when you commandeered it and you were like, if you're not going to do it, I think I might. And then I said, yes. And I was a little relieved because that solved my problem. That solved my dilemma. And then what happened? Nancy comes back and she says, guys, I have another one in the bag. And then it was just too much for me. Okay. It was too much. Yeah. Add to cart.
There's a lesson here.
Cart.
Add to cart and take with. So I'm just going to say something here. There is a big lesson here. Hollow Bunny podcast listeners, big lesson. Okay, so we've had a lot of conversations throughout our podcast about Kristen's quality as a wingman, right? Like Meghan Markle's best friend introduces her to Harry. She marries a prince.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Fail. I am an epic fail when it comes to,
Yeah.
I have no excuse for myself. Well, what are you getting at? What's the lesson here? That you're a bag wingman? How are you going to land this plane?
Well, I'm going to land this plane to a vote of our Hollow Bunny podcast followers. Was I a good wingman by saying, hey, KZ, you can afford it. It's not that expensive. It looked fantastic. You want a bag that doesn't look like a workout fanny pack. This can be business. It can be fun. It can be everything. And come on, what's the worst thing that could happen? Using your thing. Or am I an awful wingman because you spent a couple $100 bones? Oh, come on. Okay, tell me. Nobody.
Can I just tell you how much I love that bag? I look at it every day. I have no buyer's remorse, but I also have to tell you that I was a sneaky little brat because I took a picture of you posing with it and I sent it to my wife and I didn't tell her that I actually got one. I just said, look what Sil bought. And then I just came home and just started using it. I sort of like put it in the other room. And then she looked at it. She said, did you get, wait, I thought Sil bought the bag. I was like, oh no, I did too also.
I used to do that.
So
I'd
I was
have stuff
busted,
shipped to
but-
work. I'd have it shipped to work, and then I'd sneak it into the class. Yeah, there's okay, but
And then you know what's funny? But you know what's funny about that is she doesn't care. She said, "Why? Well, why didn't you just tell me?" She's like, "Why? I don't care. I don't know." See, and I know that, but I still felt. I think that was me. You know how like that, like it's really just it's us that I feels guilty, and so I felt guilty for buying it because she's like, "Why would you think I care if you bought a bag? You can buy whatever you want." But yeah, anyway. But let's talk about. You know what? This is a great segue. No, this is a great segue into the World Business Forum that we attended.
100%.
Because so Nancy, coach, customer service, that woman, I would have bought any bag in there because she was just so personable, right? So one of my takeaways at the World Business Forum was the guy who was a speaker who was talking about hospitality. Will Guidara.
Do you crush on him?
Right?
I was like, what?
Given our backgrounds, we were both chiefs of police. You're still in a leadership role. I own my own company. So do you. I was so focused on, Ginny Rometty, IBM's first female CEO, and Marshall
Simon
Goldsmith.
Sinek. Oh, Marshall Goldsmith.
Simon Sinek.
Got his book. Oh,
yes.
Marshall
Okay.
Goldsmith.
Okay. And the speaker that I cannot stop thinking about was Will Guidara. And he wrote a book, and he's a game changer in hospitality and business. And so can we talk a little bit about that service and just how that translates into leadership? Because I loved it.
You are listeners, to the Hollow Bunny podcast. Prepare yourself because we're going to bring it. We're going to talk about what Will Guidara talked about. And then when we left that event, after the Coach store, after we had our shopping extravaganza, we found a little Italian place where the people actually did what Will Guidara was talking about, and we witnessed it firsthand, and we're going to talk about that. Are you ready?
Oh my gosh. There's so many lessons that I took away from that about we're all in service industries. Law enforcement is a service industry. And, a lot of times we fall short in there. And I recognize that as, we're supposed to protect and serve. And that service part sometimes gets lost in, when officers, and I've been there where it's like, wow, this is the, 7th report I've taken today. And I'm just not feeling like, being very personable. And then you have to remember, that every person that you come across, is fighting their own battle. And that might be the first time they've ever experienced something. So service is just so broad when we talk about where our prospective professions are. He happens to be in the hospitality business, but the lessons transcend, don't you think?
Yes. And Kristen, he said a couple things that I wrote down because I wanted to remember them. He said the top has a lot of authority and a little information. The bottom has a lot of information and a little authority. And do you remember both of us going,
we gasped.
So how do we cascade communication? How do we then create a space where we have decentralized decision making, that we give decision making and authority to those at the lower parts of the hierarchy to amplify the service and the work that we do? And he gave a couple examples of that.
He did, and I love them, and I'm stealing them. And one of them he calls touch points. Touch points have a major impact. Touch points are very simple. When you look at a restaurant and, using this as the correlation, the people on the floor of the restaurant who see the most and hear the most are the bussers. They bus the table, they clear the table, and they're the ones hearing all of the conversations. So he brings them in and says, what are you hearing? What are you seeing? Well, what touch points can we have? So he gets input from the first line I mean, it's almost too easy to make this symbolic metaphor where we don't get enough input. We don't take the time to get input from our first line employees. And I'll tell you, in my career, those have been my major failures. When I've made a decision sitting at my conference table with the command staff, and I've gotten feedback from officers that say, "Wow, you're so removed from the street. Did you think this through?" And and they come back with this amazing piece of wisdom that I hadn't even considered because I hadn't been on the street for a long time. And so it takes time, and that's why leaders don't do it. I think because to get input, to get those touch points, they really don't take the time to do it because it's hard. We're busy going to meetings, but the truth is that's bullshit. Everybody can make
Okay.
time.
Okay, here's another point about that. Let's pull on this thread, Kristen, because when he said that, I was back at work sometime later, and one of the frontline deputies met with someone who's had all this ammunition to turn over. Now, our frontline law enforcement folks responsible for receiving ammunition from people like after someone dies. This guy was an estate guy. So here he was cleaning out the home for a family after someone died. He had all this ammunition. He calls a local agency, they take some, but then the guy comes to us and says, I have so much more. He had like 24,000 rounds of ammunition from the guy that died that he wanted to dispose of. Our frontline deputy made a decision to provide the service to not only the family to dispose of the ammunition, but then also for the safety of the neighborhood and for the community and to dispose of it. And so immediately I thought, where I am, holy crap, we're under no obligation to do that. What's the expense? What is it costing us? But this deputy did the right thing with the view, the vision, the kind of heart for service. And that was one of those things that, did he have the authority to do that? Well, yeah. Is there a rule or standard or policy that says what he should do in that situation? No. But what it reflected was our trust for the folks that have a lot of the information, that are out in the field. He did what was right, and there was nothing but positive consequence. I had a ton of questions afterwards about, what is this costing us? Does it cost the taxpayers anything? And our incredible people went out and found somebody who would provide the service to dispose of all this ammunition in a safe way at no expense. Isn't that an example of some
So
of that?
it is. And you know what you're bringing up is an example of all of the altruistic acts of kindness that officers do. And what this speaks to me is about going that extra mile. And I think that's what the lesson here is that there is most certainly the thing that we can do to check the box. But for me, great service are those people that go the extra mile. And that's, what his talk was about, is that, these small touch points have major impact. And if you think about it, really wasn't that majestic of an act to take this. It was, he had to go a little bit extra and do a little bit over, what, his quote job description was. But that, to me, those are the people that I want to surround myself with. Those people that look at this situation and they say, what's the best possible outcome here? I could check the box and I could go on my merry way. I've done nothing wrong by not going, above and beyond. But when you leave people with that feeling of, wow, I feel like I have had the best possible service here. And for me, that is like raindrops make oceans. They really do. And I also wrote down from that, it's cool to care, is that it's like that apathy and that disease of indifference. The disease of indifference is the biggest disease that we need to fight. And so it's just cool to care. It's cool to care about leaving the people with whom you interact, with a feeling that, man, that you walk away and they say, wow, that was excellent service. So that was my takeaway. And it was just so unexpected.
Totally unexpected. And then we left. We walked in the bitter, in the I won't say bitter, the bitter cold, but the fantastic streets of New York. And then we meandered and we had the experience we had that we described a bit ago about our retail kind of extravaganza. Then we went and we found a little Italian place, and we're sitting there eating our food. And for our listeners, imagine just kind of in the area of Broadway. And here's Kristen and I from the elation of being inspired and listening to folks that are doing the work. And then by meeting this cool little retail genius at the Coach store. And then we're in this small little Italian place. And there was a couple
Armed
kind of,
with our Coach bags, armed with our new Coach
yes,
bags.
yes, and feeling joy. And this couple, this man and this woman, were sitting kind of near us. And the man kept looking at me because we were laughing. We were doing our thing. And he said, "You two are having fun or something." And so we found out, we struck up a conversation, surprising. They're from Oklahoma. They're here on this great trip to New York and having a great time. They're about to go to a show. And here's what we experienced. The wait staff was talking with this couple, found out they're from out of town. They had this glass of Chianti the man had finished. And the manager or someone came over and said, "Oh, how was your meal?" And the guy said, "This Chianti was fantastic." The guy left, got him another glass, and came back, said, "This is on us. We hope you have a fantastic time." And do you remember
Oh,
what
we
Will
were,
Goddard talked
oh,
about with that? And then what these folks said, their impression of this meal and this the experience that they had?
yes. So I loved this. So one of the things that Will talked about was when you have, and he, by the way, has a very expensive restaurant. So we're talking, Michelin rated, 3 times over, and top restaurant in the world. And so what he determined was there's always going to be that you can have this glorious meal, but then there comes the time, and it's the inevitability of receiving the check. So what could they do to make that a more pleasurable experience? So they came up with this idea is they would bring over a bottle of cognac and with a couple shot glasses. So whoever was at the table, they would set down the check and they would say, here's the check for this evening, but no hurry. And here's a bottle of cognac. They poured a couple
You
shots
take
of
your
cognac and
time.
ah, and take your time and you sit here and you sip on that cognac. And what he found was that people then associate the check, first of all, not negatively. Second, he said, remember what he said, most people only just take the couple little sips, they pay the bill and they go. He said, that's the majority. He said, some people will polish off the bottle, but then at that point they're having a great night. So it doesn't matter. But he said, it's an investment that they provide to make people feel, so we're not rushing you, because that's the worst thing in a restaurant when you feel like, a table's getting turned over. So then we hear this talk and then we go and have this wonderful meal. We witness this in real life. Here's the check. Here's another glass. We're like, wow. And I am now are you so in tune to this? Every time I go to a restaurant now, I am watching all of the nuances that he brought up in his talk about service and about making people feel like they are so special. And it's just the coolest thing. Service is an
Yeah.
amazing thing, and how it makes you feel. Great service.
Yeah. And it translates into every single business, right? Every single business has
It really
this
does.
touch point, this opportunity. And, he said it's a complimentary bottle of cognac, right? And so there wasn't this added tension and expense. And you know what? Being kind, this shit's free. And just that
I
one
know.
little
And
expression, right?
yes. And he said that, and we've always known this, when you talk about reciprocity is, you've done something nice for me, I do
Mm-hmm.
something nice for you. And sometimes we kind of fall into those expectations of, oh, I have to do X because you were kind to me, when real genuine service and giving is not transactional. It is, here is this thing. I expect absolutely nothing in return. And that's such a great feeling. And that also translates into great service as well.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, come on, everyone, you're listening to the Hollow Bunny podcast and you just got a little bit of filling for your bunny,
A little bit of
right?
filling. A little bit
Right.
of filling. Yeah. So, by the way, I was speaking in Illinois yesterday at the Bloomington PD, Bloomington Police Department, and the chief there. Shout out to Chief Jamal Symington. He brought me in to talk leadership to his executive staff, and then he asked me if I would be interested in meeting with all of his female officers for a little dinner. So I broke bread with the female officers, and Chief Symington teed it up. He said, "Why don't you tell everybody about the Hollow Bunny podcast?" And
Oh,
so
uh,
it was a
uh,
cool thing. So he was a listener. So we have another bunny, but so it
how
was really cool.
about it?
They do what they all do. They do what they all do. What the hell does what's that mean? A hollow bunny? And I explained to them, I said, "Tell me, do you know a person who is in a position that has no substance, that has no filling? They're just, an empty suit." And they're like, "Yeah." I'm like, "That's the hollow bunny." So I gave you cred, Sil, and talked about the hollow bunny. But it's just so funny to watch people's faces when it's what the hell is the hollow bunny podcast? Well, this is what
Right?
it is.
Right. I think what it does is
Talking about filling
you,
our bunny.
right. And you and I are getting better at just describing it in a smaller way. I mean, let's hear it for Tunny. Less words. Right. And then
Less words.
it's a
Yeah.
shout out
Too
to
many
our
words.
friend Jet. She said, be more essence than detail. But in this way, be more detail than essence. Right. So
Yeah.
without
What
a
was
doubt.
also funny still? I have to bring up something that I thought was pretty hilarious because cops will totally get this. So when we were at the World Business Forum, it was Marshall Goldsmith that when he was speaking, and hey, we love him. So this is not a shot against
Love him.
Goldsmith. You're holding his book. He's brilliant. But we're sitting in the audience at this thing, and we've, paid a lot of money for these tickets. And he says, "Okay, everybody, turn to a stranger, go find a stranger in the audience." And cops, you guys will so get this. Sil and I looked at each other and we were like, "Oh, hell no, we're absolutely not doing that. We are not doing that. We are not participating in any kind of role playing whatsoever." And we crossed our arms and we were such bad sports. And I kind of feel bad about that, but it was really
What?
funny. So yesterday, there's the moral to this story. So yesterday when I was speaking, I deliver my keynotes, and right at the beginning, I don't know, I just felt like making a funny joke. I said, "So, I'm going to talk a little bit." And I said, "And then we're going to role play." And you should have seen all the
No.
cops like cross their arms and rolled their eyes. And I'm like, "Yeah, you guys, I'm just fucking with you. I'm just fucking with you." But I mean, we hate that more than anything. I just hate role playing. I don't like breaking out into little groups. Like I am responsible for my own
Oh
learning.
shit.
And I just want to take notes on the things that that are interesting to me. But
Right.
yeah, you and I both, we were so bad. We looked at each other. We're like, "Nope, not doing that." And we went out and got a donut or something.
Right. It's like, really, bitch, that ain't gonna happen. And if you break out an easel chart or a flip chart, that's not gonna happen either. No,
Yeah,
you
you
can
kind of
suck
lose
it.
me. Yeah, everyone
Yeah.
break into small groups and then someone report out. I actually hate that. I'm sorry. That may be an unpopular decision or unpopular opinion,
Didactic.
but
Yeah.
I just don't. And I know that there's a way to learn. So I'm sorry to educators who use that. It's not for me. I like to learn at my own pace and take
Uh,
what I need from things. So yeah,
well,
there's
you
that.
know,
That had nothing
we,
to do with nothing.
oh, that's awesome. I do love that you did that to them. All right, everybody, we're gonna talk a little bit and then we're gonna share, we're gonna embrace each other, and then we're gonna do some role play. Kidding.
Yeah,
Yeah,
no
that's
poker
awesome.
faces. No poker faces
Well,
there. Yeah. So
I'm
what else?
sure.
Anything else stick out at you
Oh,
from there?
all right, girls. So, Marshall Goldsmith wrote What Got You Here Won't Get You There. I've read a lot of his stuff. I found him quite remarkable. He's got, he's from UCLA PhD. I really like him. There's a couple things that came out of his talk that really encouraged me. I bought his book, The Earned Life, and I'm diving into this book, and it's quite meaningful for me. And I want to offer a couple of nuggets for our Hollow Bunny listeners, and our hundreds of sponsors will be really excited by this as well. In this book on page 70, he says this: deciding what you do each day is not the same as who you want to be right now, is not the same as who you want to become. And I found that I'm churning on that and what that means. It's what I want to do, who I want to be right now, and who I want to become. It's a very interesting thing. And some people, you and I are in our 50s, right? And we are still really finding meaning and this intellectual curiosity. And we are observers and participants, actors, witnesses to a bunch of this leadership stuff, and then offering it back in this podcast. The other thing that he talked about, he made this distinguishing statement where there's a one trick genius. It's not the same as the kind of pejorative kind of insult of a one trick pony. That's like you only have one thing you rely on. So let's toss that aside. He offers that the one trick genius is someone who finds that one thing that they are so good at. And I couldn't help but think of you, Kristen, because he says like a loaf of bread that has a whole bunch of slices. These are all the things that we experience throughout our lives, throughout our careers. We are trying each of these things like a slice, and we get rid of a few that we're like, that doesn't resonate for me. I'm not really great at that. And when we can narrow down to that one amazing thing, that one slice, that is actually the generous gift that we can give the world, that we are so inspired by. And it's that one thing that we can focus on that really amplifies our contribution. And I couldn't help but be moved by that because he said, it takes a long time for bread to bake. So it takes a long time for us to figure out what are those one or maybe two things that we are so good at that we want to continue pursuing. We want to then give to the world in that way with that one thing. And it takes a long time, right? What does that do for you?
Yeah. Sylvia, I don't know when that book came out, but that's literally the last line in my book is, figure out how you can find, your talents and figure out
Yes.
how you can serve the world. Do you think Marshall Goldsmith stole my idea? I think
Well,
maybe.
I can't help but
But
think it's not it's
let's check
he
published
may
dates.
have.
Let's check published dates because you know
Okay,
what?
he wrote this in
He's going to hear from
2020,
my
so yeah.
attorney. He's going to hear from my attorney, Amber Mondock.
Oh,
Our previous Hello Bunny guest.
we need
He's
to
going to hear
talk
from my
about
attorney.
Amber.
Okay, but wait. Okay, but listen, wait, yeah, we do because she's the best. But here's the thing. I love that so much. I think that so much is drilled into our heads about find your passion, and that's kind of what I was trying to challenge in my book is,
you were.
sometimes, maybe finding your passion is maybe not the target that we're looking for, but it's find the thing that you are so good at it and use it to serve the world. How can you best serve the world with your talents? And that's why I've got kids in their 20s and I keep telling them, say yes to everything, do everything. I mean, like if I could do it all over again, and I've loved my career, but I wish, I could have experienced so many other things to figure out what that thing was. So do everything to find the thing.
Yep. Right. And you know what? It's kind of this argument that we have all the time. Is it better to be a generalist or a specialist? And so
That's a
be a
great
generalist.
question.
Right. Be a generalist early in your life. Why
Yeah,
not?
that's
And that's
right.
one thing I loved about my career in a large police organization is I could move about every 3 years and really earn a new spot in a new place. I mean, we all know, you spend the time in our field, you spend your time in field operations and you get good at that, and then you become a training officer. And in my case, I then went to a specialty alcohol beverage control unit. I taught at the academy. I got to be the worst undercover prostitute in the history of policing. Like terrible, terrible, terrible hoe. So I took that slice of hoe out of my loaf and I threw it away. I wasn't good at that. I was terrible at narcotics. Terrible. Threw that away. And then just started finding that loaf is that generalist, and it's such an interesting visual, right? And then narrow to what really speaks to what we're freaking good at and what lights our soul, right?
Yeah, you bring up something pretty interesting there, and you've just literally filled a gap for me that I had because I've always had this envy of those in corporate America that, or at least this curiosity of like, how can you jump from one place to another? That's so interesting. You keep your job for 3-4 years and then you move on to something different.
Yep.
Either in a different company or even in a different field or related altogether. And I've always been so intrigued by that. And I was thinking, gosh, and I've done the same thing for 30 years. But the truth is no, I haven't. And you're so right. Every 3 years, I got to the point where I was like, wow, I want to become a field training officer. I want to challenge myself. So I think that's a really important point to make is that Even if you are in one organization, there are many ways that you can still stay a generalist
Mm-hmm.
to find the thing that you love, to find your niche. And, I think
Right.
that most of us, we carve out this niche for ourselves. And, when we fall into it as though this is our thing, when really we should be out there experimenting with so many different tasks, different jobs, putting ourselves out there so we can determine what the thing is that we're really good at.
Well, look at one of our previous guests. We've had so many amazing guests. No, not Oprah or Dolly Parton or The Rock. I mean, they whatever, but amazing guests like
Incoming.
your Esquire, Miss, your attorney. Do we want to say her actual business name?
It's Mondoc Law. So yeah, our name is Amber Mondoc. So we can go ahead and plug that.
Mondoc Law,
I'm gonna
Amber
ask for royalties. I
Esquire.
should be on their marketing team.
Well,
Yeah, I've
you
never
should
plugged a
think.
lawyer before. It's so interesting. I've never, it's like I sell products. I'm like, oh, I love this product, and here I
You're
am, like,
selling a
you need to
service.
use my attorney.
Well,
She's
right.
amazing. My attorney's
So think
amazing,
about this.
and
Think
Sally's
about this.
amazing. Her wife is amazing. Yeah. So yeah, go ahead.
Okay. There's just all kinds of amazing, questionable football teams, but amazing people. So I think one of the, something interesting is, you look at this in terms of other fields, healthcare. So you go to med school and then they refine a specialty and they become, a generalist at medicine, right? But then they find that one thing that motivation, that inspiration, the strategy, the tactics then drive them toward the specialty, whether it's eyes or pancreas or endocrinology or hepatology, whatever it is, right? And then they become really fucking good at it. And then look at Amber. She was this high powered badass attorney at a firm, and then she made the leap. And now look at this specialty, this niche that she's carving out to become the
Yeah.
best of the best in that area. Doesn't it follow the natural progression of life, right?
It really does. And then that, also speaks to service as well. I mean, that's the
Sure.
reason that you hear me plugging her, because it's, for, there's seemingly small needs, estate needs and real estate needs, and that's a niche, it's transactional law, but it's also, as a customer, as I've said, I've walked away feeling very cared for. And I think that is truly the lesson, whether it's hospitality and leadership, whether it's Goldsmith, or Will talking about hospitality. It's, did we do our very best, to provide that service? And if you are those giving the service, how did you come? That's your gift. That's your talent, and hone that, right?
Yeah, and
Yeah, it's
Goldsmith
great.
talks in his book, also on page 73, for those of you that are going to read it, he talks about action, ambition, and aspiration. And this is really an important piece that I'm really churning on a lot. Action, he says, is what we're doing now, like I talked about. Ambition is what we want to achieve, and aspiration is who we want to become. And so I think that's part of, as a generalist, you kind of figure that out, and then you determine what steps you're going to take to become the person that you want to become. That's not just about work. It's about how you show up in this amazing one life we have to live. So you're listening to the Hollow Bunny podcast. You've had a few things to churn on, and Kristen, you and I spent some amazing time as kind of students of this space to really think about, to churn on, to be inspired by others that might just change our field of view, might just change kind of how we focus. And like you said, something that has come up for both of us, we left that with some new things to think about, new things to observe, new things to put into action where we serve, where we are in a space where people give their time and their energy to us to then want to evaluate self and to then show up differently, right?
Yeah. And, this is also about, making sure that we stay curious. We went to this event, and I wanted to go there because I speak for a living. That's what I do. I go and I stand on stages and I speak, and I want to get better. I want to learn from the very best. I did learn, never to, break people out and make them meet strangers and role play. But I want to do that. And then we absorbed all of this content. And I think their lesson here also is, we really didn't have to go do that. We're pretty secure in our careers and where we've been and where we're going. And yet this was a need for us to go get better and to, make sure that we are in a growth mindset and not a fixed mindset.
Totally.
Where, yeah, we know what we know. Cool, great. But let's learn some more shit. And man, we walked away from that event and we were like, we just wanted to set the world on fire. I came back and I started writing more, and it just, all of the people that made me think about, life and leadership and service. And, one thing Goldsmith said is that there is a path to wherever it is you're going. When you decide, what it is to set clear goals and to make progress towards those goals. And a lot of people think that they have to do something so, monumental, when the truth is that it's our job to get 1% better. What little thing makes progress towards your goals? If you're just trying to lose weight, you want to lose that last 5-10 pounds, pick one thing. Don't tomorrow wake up and go, I'm only going to eat, salad. Just pick one thing that that you could cut out. That's, 1% better. And the same is true for what we're pursuing in our personal lives and in our business world, in our professional lives. Just make little steps towards those goals. And you know what I loved in the middle of it? He also said, find meaning. And he said, build positive relationships. And that's also true, because what we have found is that human connection matters above all else.
Yep.
At the end of our careers, then our titles are going to fall away, and who we are left with are the relationships. But here's what he said right in the middle of that formula: be happy. Just stop, look around, and say, wow, this is really cool. We're learning. Just stop and just be happy instead of always trying to climb the mountain and looking ahead.
Yeah.
Just stop for just a moment, be happy, celebrate what you have achieved. Celebrate the small achievements and keep going.
Yeah, and I'm gonna end my contribution here with a few things. So all of that underscore, period, exclamation point, whatever, right? Bravo, Kristen. The other thing I have to say is to spend that time in that space with you, and to really just spend that time with you enriched my soul and inspired me quite a bit. And you're a credible and incredible human. And I'm going to leave our listeners on with my part with this. Page 214, Marshall Goldsmith says this: credibility is a reputational quality earned over time when people trust you and believe what you say. And Kristen, I have witnessed you speak. You are credible. I had recently some of the folks that attended the Women Leaders in Law Enforcement Conference. We all attended it together this year, and they got to hear you speak, and they bought your book. And a couple of them said, I couldn't put it down, and I feel like I can tackle the world because of what Kristen wrote and her experience and how she shared it. You are credible and incredible. You're a joy, and you have filled my bunny today, young lady. And I'm guessing the listeners of the Hollow Bunny podcasts will feel the same way on the other side of this. I hope they've enjoyed it.
Oh, thanks, buddy. I loved spending time with you. This was so great for us to be together and to buy bags together. And what a good friend you are, because when I was unpacking my bag and getting out my toiletries, I sliced my finger, the top of my finger on my razor. And so you are such a great caregiver. You have, if anybody is ever around Syl and there is some sort of ailment, I was bleeding out. I only had about 3 minutes left to live. I'm pretty sure. And Syl,
it's getting very dark.
Oh my God. It was getting dark. Everything was blurring around the edges, and I was in shock. And plus my blood was thinner because I had 2 whiskeys. And so I'm sure that was part of the problem. and the reason it happened. And you sprung to action, and in your bag, you had 42 different sizes of Band-Aids, and you kept changing my sutures. I really didn't get stitches, but you kept changing my bandages throughout our days together. And yeah, you're a heck of a caregiver, but I'm all jokes aside, I loved spending time with you. And I just love leaning into life with you and to be curious about it
that's
all.
awesome.
And I love learning from you. So thank you so much. So listen, bunnies, thank you for showing up today, and to our millions of listeners, and to our 48 sponsors. One of which is the NFL. Taylor Swift is one of our sponsors. We have so many sponsors, and thank you.
We were going to be on the cover of Time magazine with her.
Oh,
and it was just
it's
too much to
inevitable,
look
we
at.
were like,
so
no.
she chose the kitten.
Yeah.
Whatever.
Well,
I'm
and
okay
we
with
said,
it.
Tay, this is your moment. You take this moment, Tay. And so we gave it to her. And you'll also note that during our podcast, we don't pause to shout out our sponsor, because that can be annoying. But just know that we have all of them. We've got all the Fortune 500 sponsors. So we want you to know that we're glad that you're here, and we hope that we have helped fill your bunny today. Ted Madden, thank you for producing this podcast. And thanks to Jake Zeman, my son, and his friends Fabian and Zoe for writing the song that you're about to hear on the jingle of our podcast. If you like us, please subscribe. Please like it. Please review it. Please tell everyone you know about it. If you don't like it, well, then what the hell do you know about podcasts anyway? Keep filling your own bunnies with substance. Just suck it and move on. Go find another pod. Go find less. Keep filling your own bunnies with substance, and please keep adding substance to others and to the world. Thanks for coming.
Thanks, everyone.
When you look inside, what do you find? Are you content to fall behind? When you lose your way and you've lost your why, have courage and get ready to fight the hollow bunny. When the way ahead is covered in smoke and you're tired and scared and you're losing hope, you'll open your heart and your eyes to see a challenge and a question. Why not me? To fight the hollow bunny. And we all feel hollow sometimes, but the monsters are only in your mind. It's a tough pill to swallow, but if you're brave and kind, you'll be alright. If you fight the hollow bunny. When the challenge ahead scares you to death, you tame the imposter inside instead. To change the world, you've got to start small. It takes a leader to say, I don't know it all, and I know I'm gonna fall, but I'll pick it up and come back stronger, failing forward and moving onward, doing the hard thing and the right thing, forever fighting the hollow bunny. And we all feel hollow sometimes, but the monsters are only in your mind. It's a tough pill to swallow, but if you're brave and kind, you'll be alright. If you fight the hollow bunny. If you're tough on the outside but empty within, something's gonna crack, you've gotta start again. You're tough on the outside but empty within, something's gonna crack, you've gotta start again. The monsters